Hey everyone, before I get started talking about what it is we're building in this video, I just want to say that you should be familiar with React, JavaScript, and have at least a basic level of understanding of how Next.js works in order to follow along here. Now on this channel, I've got resources where you can learn all of that stuff, and I'm leaving links in the description, so if you're not comfortable yet, you can go click those links, watch those videos, and then come back. However, if you are comfortable, we can move forward talking about what it is we're building. Now, we are going to be building a blog here that you can build and deploy yourself if you'd like. We are going to use Next.js, which is a React framework that allows us to do a lot of cool stuff like server-side rendering very easily. If you're not familiar with what server-side rendering is or why it's important, especially for a blog, I'm going to leave a link in the description so you can watch a very short, very concise video of what server-side rendering is and what the benefits are. So if you're not familiar with it, go ahead and click that and come back. But we're going to use Next.js for the front end here alongside Sanity IO, which will be our headless CMS to manage our content. Now, Sanity IO is a CMS, which is a content management system, which is going to allow us to manage our blog's content without having to set up a server. So in other words, all of the stuff that you see here, all of the data itself is going to be handled by Sanity IO. And it gives us a convenient dashboard, which we can deploy and customize completely, where we can manage our content. Now on the left here, you can see the types of content that we have are category, author, and post. Now in this tutorial, I'm only going to be worried about posts. I'm not worried about authors or categories in this, but you should also keep in mind that it's not limited to blog posts. You can write and create your own types of content. This is a template that we're going to use that just so happens to be for blogs. But moving forward, I click post, you can see a list of posts along with the ability to create a new post. And if I were to click, say, the one more test post, you can see that there's a title, a slug. Now a slug is basically the unique identifier for the given post. So if you can see here, the slug is one-more-test. If I go over to the blog and click that particular article, the URL for that post is /post/one-more-test. So that slug is what we're going to use to identify a given post. Since we're on here, you can see that the post is here and all the content for that post is here. So yeah, on our dashboard, we have the ability to upload an image for a post and also add published date so that we can sort and show a timestamp if we want to. And then we have a rich text editor where we can go in and actually write our post and then the ability to publish it. So this is super cool. This will allow us to have a blog where we can focus only on the front end and then not worry about the back end because Sanity IO, our content management system, is going to be doing that for us. Now, before we get started, please, if you don't mind, smashing the like button and subscribe if you haven't already so that you don't miss any more awesome videos like this. And we're going to go ahead and get started on this tutorial. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're probably going to want to go to sanity.io and sign up if you haven't already. Now, I'm going to click the pricing tab so that you can see that the standard plan, which is what I'm on, is free, no credit card required. And the standard plan is actually good enough to where you could deploy this thing and actually have a pretty successful blog without paying anything. You wouldn't have to worry about paying anything unless you are on a huge team and you have a very, very, very famous blog or something like that, or maybe not even a blog, but some sort of website that's very, very big. You don't have to worry about that. It's very generous quota as it says right here. So go ahead and get started creating an account and all that stuff. And once you've created an account, go ahead and resume the video. Once you've created your account, you're going to want to create a project. Now, your dashboard might look a little bit different than mine because you have the ability to use a new layout. So you can see the layout can look one of two different ways here. So just keep in mind what I'm saying and then apply it to whichever layout you see on your screen. So I have a project already called Learning. I'm going to create a new one specifically for this tutorial. Now I'm going to click this Create New Project button. And you can see that it gives me some code that I can type into my terminal in order to get a new project up and running. So what I am actually going to do is start by copying just this first part and ignoring the second half of it, just because I want to start by installing the CLI and talking a little bit about that. So copy that first part first and open up your terminal. And with your terminal open, go ahead and paste in that code and click enter. Now I'm not going to click this because I've already installed it, but this is just going to install the Sanity CLI, which is a tool that will help us manage our stuff globally here using NPM. So go ahead and install that and wait for it to finish. Once that's finished, you're going to want to go to wherever you want your project to be. So I'm seeding into my tutorial folder. And once you're in the folder that you want to be in, go ahead and type in Sanity init. Now it's going to take you through the process of setting up a new Sanity project. So I'm going to go through these prompts. Create new project. Your project name, I'm going to call it Next Blog. Your content will be stored in a data set, so go ahead and read that. I'm going to say use the default configuration, so I'm going to type in the letter Y. Now it's creating the data set for us. Now for project output path, I'm just going to click enter here. So here we get to pick a template for our project. Now you have the ability with Sanity IO to completely customize it. You can build things that are not on this list, but it does give us the opportunity to select a template. And for us, selecting blog is extremely convenient for us to get started. So let's go ahead and go down to blog here and click enter. Go ahead and wait for this to finish. Now that that has completed, it's created our Sanity IO project for us. So I'm going to cd into that directory that I just created, which is next blog, and just ls to see what's in here. We have config, node modules, we have a tsconfig.json for TypeScript, package.json. So it's very much, your standard npm node project. So let's actually open it up in our code editor, which I'm going to be using VS Code for this. And let's have a look at what we see in the package.json file. We see two scripts, sanity start and sanity build, which we have start and build for those. So we could just say npm run start and it will run this for us. So let's see what happens when we do that. I'm already in that directory, so I'm going to run npm run start and let's see what happens here. Okay, so after about 30 seconds or so, it's showing that it's compiled and it shows that I can go to localhost 3333. So I'm copying that and I'm opening up my browser to go to the URL it just told me. Okay, so now we have to log in. So however you logged in with your Sanity IO account when you created it, this is how you're gonna wanna log in here. I personally logged in via GitHub, so I'm clicking GitHub here. It's going through, logging in, redirecting, and now I have a dashboard where I can manage all of the content for my blog. And as you can see here on the top left, we have next-blog, which is the title that I gave it. So what we can do is go into the post section and see that there's no documents of this type found. Well, that's obvious because we have yet to actually create any posts. So let's go right here and click that to create our first post. And I'm just going to call this is my first post. Now for the slug, you can either create your own slug, so you can do something like 1 or, A or something simple like that, or you can click generate, which it will then generate a slug for you. That's what I'm going to do here. Now I'm not going to worry about author, but I am going to add an image. I clicked upload and I've selected an image and now it's uploading the image and now you can see it here. That's awesome. So for publish that, I'm going to go ahead and just click now. We probably won't worry about that in this video, but I'm just going to do that. And now we have the ability to enter in the post content. Now I'm just going to use this lorem ipsum generator to write my blog content here. So I'm just going to copy these two paragraphs, go into here and paste them in. And you can see that we have some header tags, we have some stuff that's bold, and then we have some paragraphs. So we're going to want to make sure that in our blog, it also looks like this, but we'll worry about that once we get there. So I'm going to click publish, and now we actually have our first blog post actually stored via Sanity IO. It was really that easy. That is all we need to really worry about on the Sanity IO side, other than creating more posts. So now that we have Sanity IO set up, what we need to do is go ahead and get our Next.js front-end project set up as well. So again, if you're not familiar with Next.js, we're going to kind of breeze past the very basics. It's still going to be pretty beginner level, but if you're not familiar at all with Next.js, please go ahead and watch my beginner Next.js tutorial before moving forward. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and go right into this. So in my terminal, I'm just going to open up a new tab because I want to keep my Sanity IO Studio running. So I'm going to open up a new tab and I'm going to cd into my directory where I want to put my Next.js application. So I'm inside of the folder that I want to put my Next.js application, and I'm going to type in npx create next app, and I'm going to call this app next-blog-fe, and the FE just stands for front end. So I'm going to click enter. We're going to go through the setup process for the Next.js app. It's going to do all of the stuff it has to do to get this thing bootstrapped. And once that is complete, we're going to continue forward. All right, so I'm going to cd into the directory it just created for me, which is going to be the title of the project. Now I'm inside of that directory and I'm going to do an ls. Now you can see, again, we have our node modules folder. So, since we have that, we're not going to have to run npm install. The create next app command did that for us. So with that said, I'm going to open this up in my code editor. And I no longer need the Sanity IO project in my code editor, so I'm going to use this window to open it. And now I have my front-end Next.js application open in my code editor. There are two dependencies we're going to want to add to our project in order to do some awesome stuff. And they're actually provided by Sanity. So I'm going to go to my package.json file, go into my dependencies folder, and paste in these two right here. So you can add these as well. This is going to be the @ sanity / block content -2 react, and then @sanity / image -URL. So just go ahead and add these at the top of your dependencies folder and save. And what we're going to do is just run npm install inside of our project directory for us to be able to install these dependencies. Now, you know, we could have just ran npm install and then typed in the packages, but you can do it either way. It's fine. So I've installed my dependencies. We can go ahead and move forward with writing our code. So I'm just going to go ahead and run the project. So I'm going to say npm run dev to go ahead and get my development server up and running. And it says it's running on localhost 3000. So I'll open up my web browser and hop into there. And let's see what we have. Okay, so we have our normal boilerplate project here. So, you know, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into here and start by deleting all of the stuff that's in this file. So go all the way down to my parenthesis here and get rid of all of the stuff inside of these return parentheses. And I'm just going to start by saying div, and then inside of here, just hello world, just to make sure that everything is updating as expected. And here we see hello world, so I know that everything is running good. I got my hot reloading, everything's good. So personally, where I think we should start on this particular project is with an actual blog post. And that's because we already have a single post and we already have all of the data for the post. So we might as well go ahead and work on displaying that given post. So if I go back to my Sanity IO editor here, you can see that the only post we have is this. This is my first post. And I'm going to copy my slug because that's what we're going to use to identify this post. And the URL pattern that we're going to use is /post/slug. So with that said, I'm going to jump into my Next.js app and type in /post/ and then I'm going to paste in the slug, which is this is my first post. Now, obviously, I'm going to get a 404 page for this because we have yet to create a page for this. So in your code editor, go ahead and jump into the pages folder and create a new folder called post. And inside of that folder, create a new file with square brackets. And inside of those square brackets, type in slug.js. And now we're going to be able to create our post page. So I'm going to start by exporting a const called post, which is a function. And then below, I'm going to export it as a default. So export default post. Now inside of my post function, I'm going to return a little bit of JSX just to make sure that we've got things working so far. And I'm going to say I am a post. Save it, and let's go back and see if we still get a 404 when I refresh. We no longer get a 404, it says I am a post. But how are we going to get this blog content and display it for a given post? Well, what we're going to want to do is use server-side rendering to get the data for us. And the reason why we want to do that is because we're going to want to make sure that if a bot like Google's bots or social media bots were to parse this, we have the data hydrated on the back end so that when they get that information, they can have information about the posts and all that good stuff. So we're going to do it inside of get server-side props. So below our post export, I'm going to create and export a new const called get server-side props. And actually, this is going to take a argument called page context. And this function is actually going to be asynchronous. So I'm going to add the async keyword here. And we're going to want to start by getting the actual slug out of the URL here. So let's create a variable called page slug and set it equal to page context.query.slug. And I'm just going to console.log that just so I can make sure that we're getting the slug as expected. So I'm saving it. I'm going to open this up, but I'm going to also open up the browser and click refresh. And let's have a look here and see if it logs the slug, and it does. Right here, it logs this is my first post. So I know that I'm grabbing the slug as expected. Now, of course, we're getting an error because we're not returning anything from this function like we're supposed to. That was just to make sure that we're getting the slug as expected. Now, if we don't have a slug, so in other words, if we have /post and then there's no slug, we want to make sure that we return something so that we don't explode on the server side. So I'm going to do a quick check that just says if not page slug, then we want to return an object with not found as true. And this is going to basically 404 us. Okay, so what are we going to do in order to get the information from Sanity IO to be able to build our blog post here on the front end? We're going to have to do some sort of HTTP request. But the way that the HTTP requests work in Sanity IO is we're going to have to do a query. We're going to use a query language that they provide. And this query language looks a little weird at first, but it's pretty easy to understand what's going on. So this query language is what we're going to be able to use to query through our content and find exactly what it is we want. And in this case, we want to find a post with a specific slug. We know that we have the page slug. What we want to do is find the blog post with that particular page slug. So we need to create a query that says that. So I'm going to create a query variable and set it equal to a string. Now I'm using the backticks here, which are underneath the escape button and above the tab button on my keyboard because I want to be able to interpolate JavaScript into my string. So we're going to start off with an asterisk and 2 square brackets, which is saying, hey, I'm a query string. And inside of here is where we're going to type our actual query. So I'm going to put 2 spaces in here and I'm going to put my cursor in the center and I'm going to put an underscore and put type. And type is actually a property of a particular content object. And the type of content that we want to look for is post. So I'm saying underscore type is equal to post. But we also can chain another query on it so that we can say, hey, I want to post and I want to make sure that the post is also the one with the current slug. So we can say slug.current and say that we want the one where it is equal to our page slug. Now it has to be inside of quotes, but this is where we're going to interpolate our JavaScript. So we need to put our $ followed by an opening and closing curly brace. And inside of here, we can put our page slug variable. And this is going to end up being type equals post and slug.current equals whatever our page slug is whenever we load this particular URL. So we have that, but now we actually have to create a URL because we're going to put our query inside of the URL that we're calling. So the URL is going to end up looking like this. Let me show you here. We have https:// and then here is your project ID. Now we have to go and grab our project ID really quick. So go ahead and go to your Sanity IO dashboard, not the one that you have deployed yourself, but the one on actual sanity.io website. Go ahead and go to your dashboard. I'm going to click refresh here so that I can see my project. And I can see my next blog project, which I just clicked on. And I need to find my project ID, which depending on which UI you're using, it may look a little bit different, but mine is located right here. So I'm clicking copy to get my project ID and going back to my code, and I'm going to put my project ID here. So https://projectid.api, and make sure that's your project ID, .api.sanity.io/v1/data/query/production, and production is our data set. We can have multiple data sets, but we're just using production in this tutorial. And then we're going to put a question mark followed by query, and then we can say equals to and put our actual query. So this is our URL. It's kind of a big one, but it's going to contain all of the information that we need in order to get all of the data. So we don't have to have a body. We can just put all of our stuff inside of the URL and it will know what to do with it. So with that being said, I'm going to use the fetch API to call this URL and it should return the data that we want. So I'm going to create a variable called result and set it equal to await fetch. Now we want to call the URL we just created, so I'm passing in URL, but then we also want to make sure that we convert the response to JSON. So I'm saying res.json here. Now the result is going to be the JSON representation of whatever comes back from that URL. And what we want to do is grab the post from that response. So I'm creating a variable called post and setting equal to result because our result is going to have a property called result. So result.result 0. Don't forget your equal sign. So result.result 0. So result.result is going to be an array of posts or an array of data. And we just want to make sure that we get the very first item in that because we should only have one because we're specifying the slug. So now we have our post. We want to make sure that we return that so that our component here above has access to the post. So if there's not a post, if not post, then we want to make sure that we return not found true, just like we did here. So I'm copying that and pasting it here. Otherwise, we want to go ahead and return the object that the component expects. So else return an object, and this object will have a property called props, which is also an object, and it will contain an image, a body, and a title. So the title is going to be post.title. The body is going to be post.body, and then image is going to be post.main image. So now we're returning this object with these props here. And since we're doing that, we need to make sure that we accept those props here in our post component. So we're going to expect a title, a body, and an image. And I just want to make sure all of this works. So the best thing to do here before moving forward is just log all of this and make sure that the data looks as expected. So I'm logging body, title, and image here. Click save, go to my browser, go to the Next.js project, click refresh. You can see I have an error here. Now this particular error is because I'm not encoding my query. So I need to go back to my code here, and where I'm defining this query, I'm gonna cut this string here and I'm gonna type in the following: encode URI component. And then this is a function that can encode our query, and I'm gonna paste my query into that and click save. And now I'm going to refresh, and you can see that I no longer get that error message. So going into the inspect, I want to take a look at what we're logging. So the title is here. That's working good. Then we have an array, which I'll go to that in just a moment. Don't worry about that, that's our body. But the last one is our image. So if I open up our image, you can see we have an object with a ref and a type. Don't worry about that. We're gonna use one of the dependencies we installed towards the beginning to process this and create our actual image URL. But let's have a look at our body. Why is our body an array? Well, if you think about it, if we go back to our Sanity IO dashboard, on our dashboard, if we look at our content body, you can see that this is really like multiple blocks. Like this is an H2. If we're talking in terms of HTML, this is an H2. This is a paragraph, which is different inherently than an H2. So that's why it's an array. And it's an array of 4 items because there's 4 blocks. 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks, okay? And now we're not gonna have to parse this ourselves. We have a dependency that we installed towards the beginning that's gonna handle parsing this for us. So Sanity makes it super easy for us to worry about that, but I just wanted to explain that so you understand what's going on here. So if I dig into one of these, you can see as I go through, you can see that this text is what is lorem ipsum. It's here as well. And it's gonna be the same for each of the other blocks. And that's cool. But let's go ahead and start displaying this information on our app. So we have the title, body, and image. Let's at least get the title up on the screen, and let's see if we can get the image as well, but that's gonna take a little bit of work because we're gonna have to use that dependency that we installed. All right, so into our code, we're gonna go to the top here where our post component is, and I'm gonna get rid of this console.log because I really no longer need that. And instead of returning this, I'm going to create some parentheses, and I'm going to create a div, and then inside of this div, I'm going to create yet another div and give this a class name. Now, before I actually give this a class name, I need to create a CSS file for this component. So in here on the left in my styles folder, I'm going to create a new file that I'm going to call post.module.css. And I need to write some CSS in here. We're going to need a main class. I'm going to give a margin of 25 pixels, a width of 750 pixels. Then I'm going to set a max width, and I'm going to use calc to set my max width. And the reason why I'm setting a max width is because I don't want the width to ever be bigger than the screen itself. So I'm going to say I want the max width to be the view width minus 50 pixels. So I'm just using calc to handle that logic for us. Now I'm going to have a main image class. And in here, I'm going to set the width of the image to 100% so that it's always as wide as the container. And then finally, I want to target the paragraph inside of the body and set a couple things. First, I'm going to set the font size to 24 pixels. I'm going to set the text indent, which is that indentation that paragraphs should have. We're going to add that to 50 pixels. I'm going to set the line height to 45 pixels so that there's line vertically between each there's height vertically between each line, so it's not so bunched together. And we're going to want to do the same thing vertically as well. And we can do that with letter spacing and set that to 1.5 pixels. And then above that, I'm just going to put the text align to justify. So now I have some CSS that I can use inside of my component, and I can finish writing that class name, which I'm going to set to styles.main, but we don't have the styles object yet, so we need to import it. So I'm going to import styles from, and this is going to be .. Scroll down here to styles, and then we call it post.module.css. Cool. So inside of the main, I want to put all the content for the blog post. So we're going to start with the title, which should be inside of an h1 tag. Put some JavaScript in here, and that should just be title because we already have the title that's being passed in as a prop here. So just to make sure that that's working, I'm going to save it. Now you can see that my post title is actually right here. Super awesome. But below that, I'm going to want to make sure that I put my image. Now, in order to put my blog post image in here, I'm going to have to somehow build a URL from my main image object that we logged earlier. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to import that image URL package that we installed towards the beginning. So go ahead and import image URL builder from sanity/image URL. And once you've done that, we're going to actually create some state in our component. So const, I'm going to create some state called image URL and set image URL and set it equal to use state. And I'm going to initialize this as an empty string. Now make sure that use state is imported from React. You're going to want to make sure that use effect is also imported from React, because below this, we're going to create an effect that will run on mount, and we're going to want to make sure that we are synchronized with image. So I'm putting image inside of my dependency array. Now, if you're not familiar with React hooks, I do have a video that I'm going to link below for you. It's very short. I think it's React hooks in 6 minutes. But inside of this, I want to create my image builder object, my image builder function, I should say. So const image, call it image URL builder. Actually, I shouldn't call it that because that's what it's called here. I'll just call it image builder is equal to image URL builder. And this function takes an object. We need to pass two things into this object, the project ID. And the project ID, I'm just going to take from right here inside of this URL, right here. So make sure you grab yours. And that is what I'm going to set here. The second is going to be the data set. And the data set, we only have one for this project, and that's production. Make sure you spell that correctly. So I've created my image builder, and below that, I'm going to use my image builder to set the image URL. So set image URL, and inside of here, I'm going to call the image builder .image, and I'm going to pass in this image to this function. So passing an image here. So now we're setting the image in state using our image builder that Sanity IO has given us. We have that set in state. Below our title, we want to display our image, but we want to make sure that we only display it if the image is in state. So I'm going to say image URL and this is going to short circuit. So if image URL exists, then it's going to render whatever is on the right side of these and symbols here. And what is it we want to render? We want to render an image tag with a source equal to image URL, but let's also give it a class name. And if you remember, inside of post module, we have this main image class name that we created. Let's give that class name here, styles.mainImage. Click save, and let's see what we have on the screen. Now we have the title and the image. So now we just want to make sure that we display the actual body of the blog post below all of this. So back into our code, I need to import the other dependency that we installed alongside this one. And that would be import block content from sanity/block content to React. So go ahead and make sure you have that imported, and it's going to be super easy for us to show the body using that. So below the image, I'm creating a div, and I'm going to give it a class name of styles.body. And inside of here, I'm going to use the block content element and just pass in the body. So body is equal to body. Now body is a property on block content, but what we're passing in is actually the body that we're getting here as a prop. So we're setting the body. Click save. Let's see what it looks like. Click refresh. So I'm still not seeing it. Why is that? The reason is because instead of body here, it's supposed to be blocks. So my apologies. Block content, the property blocks we need to set to body. So click save, jump into here, and now we see the post. But I want this all to be centered. So I'm actually going to run back to my CSS. And instead of setting the margin here to 25 pixels, I'm going to set the margin to auto. Cool. So that looks better. Now we have our blog post, but what we don't have is our toolbar. We need our toolbar, and we also don't have our homepage, and our homepage is what's going to display the various blog posts. And if we're going to display a list of blog posts, we should probably create one more blog post. So what we need to do next is create our toolbar, create our homepage, and create another blog post. So I'm going to start with the toolbar. Going into my code here, I'm going to create a new folder on the root level called components, and it's going to be shared across multiple pages. Inside of components, I'm going to create a file called toolbar.js. And inside of here, I'm going to export a const called toolbar, and it's not going to take any props. And I don't need to export default. I can just keep it like that. Let's import the router from next router. So import use router from next router, and inside of the component, create a variable called router and set it equal to use router, just like that. Now what we need to return is a div container And I'm going to give this a class name, but we actually need to create a CSS file here. So inside of the styles folder, create a new folder called toolbar.module.css. And in here, I'm pasting the styles because I don't want to sit here and type it all, but I'll explain everything that's here, and then you can copy it on your own CSS file. But I'm setting the margin to auto so that the container of the toolbar is centered. Setting a width here, there should only be one. I'll set it to 750. The display is flex. The max width is 100% so that it will never exceed the width of the screen. Setting the color of the text here, adding a margin bottom so that there's space between the toolbar and the content. Justify content is center so that all of the flex content is centered. Then I'm going to set the background color to a very dark gray and a border radius to 0055, which will allow the bottom two corners to be slightly rounded. Then I'm targeting each of the links inside of the main, setting the margin to 25 pixels and the cursor to pointer so that it looks like a link. And then finally, when we hover over that, I'm going to change the color slightly so that it looks a little bit more interactive. That's my styles here. Now I need to import those styles. So import styles from, and I'm actually going too far out here. It needs to be //styles/toolbar.module.css. Now I can add my class name here for the div, which should be styles.main. Now inside of this, we should put each of our links. The first one should be the home page. So each of these links is going to have a div. Now the text for this is just going to say home, and we're going to do a total of 3 of these. Now I'm going to have a Twitter and a GitHub. You can add something other than Twitter in GitHub if you'd like to. And I'm just going to save, and I want to make sure that I add my toolbar component to my post component. I'm going to add it right above my main div here. So inside of my slug.js, inside of my post folder, I'm going to add a toolbar tag just like this. And I'm going to scroll up and make sure that I'm importing toolbar from the folder where we just created it. So I've used it here and I've imported it up here. I'm going to save it and see if we can at least see the toolbar. And I see the toolbar. Now, of course, if I were to click anything, nothing happens. That's because I've yet to actually add on-click listeners for those items inside of the toolbar. So for the home page, we're going to want to add an on-click. And whenever we click on it, we're going to want to call router.push. And router.push is going to allow us to route to another page in the app based on a route. The route that we're going to want to go to is just /, which says, hey, go to the home route, the base URL. Click save. Now, if I click on it, we're going to go to the home page. So I click it, now we're on the home page, which right now just says hello world. So I'm going to go back. And if I click on Twitter and GitHub, nothing happens. That's because we need to actually set the on-clicks for those as well. So just run into here, go to the div for Twitter, set the on-click. And what we want to do instead of using router is we want to go to an external website's URL. And to do that, we can just say window.location.href is equal to, and then we can put the URL to your Twitter. Now I'll just put the URL to my Twitter for now, which is https://twitter.com/portexe. And I'm going to do the same thing for GitHub. So I'm adding an on-click for my GitHub here. And instead of the URL for Twitter, I'm just going to use the URL for GitHub. So I'm saving. Now I have the Twitter and GitHub links. Let me just make sure that they work. I click Twitter, now I'm on my Twitter page. I click GitHub, and now I'm on my GitHub page. So the toolbar is working as expected. I want to quickly add my toolbar to my home page as well. So I need to go into my index.js file and make sure that it's imported. So import toolbar from components/toolbar. And I just want to throw it here. So I will put it at the top above my hello world, save it. And now if I click home, the toolbar is on the home page as well. Okay. So let's go ahead and build our home page. Now on our home page, we're just going to have a very simple layout. It's just going to say like, hey, welcome to my blog, recent posts, and then it's going to display a list of recent posts. So in order to display a list of recent posts, we have to get our posts from Sanity, and we're going to do that using get server-side props. So jump into your index.js file, which is your homepage, and below your function here, we're going to export a const called get server side props. And of course, this is async, just like the other one, and it accepts page context, just like the other one as well. And it's pretty much the same concept. We're going to create a query. So const query is equal to, and remember that we want to encode the URI component, add your backticks, Actually, we don't need backticks for this because we're going to want to get all posts. We don't need to get posts based off of any specific variable or any specific thing. We're going to get all the posts. So we don't need the backticks. We can just use normal quotes. And to do our query, we need an asterisk followed by square brackets, and inside of the square brackets, set type. So underscore type is equal to post. Okay. So I want to get all of the content where the type is equal to post. Now let's build our URL. Now the URL is going to be the same exact URL that we created inside of our post component. So I'm just copying this variable. I'm just going to post this into here. It's the exact same line of code. The only thing that's different is our query. So this doesn't have to change. It's our query that we changed. Below that, we want to make sure that we grab the result, which is again the exact same line of code as inside of the post component. So now we have the result from the server. Now let's go ahead and create a if statement. And let's say if not result dot result. So if we for some reason don't get a result, or if result dot length is 0. So go ahead and say if not result dot result or not result dot length. If that's the case, if that happens, we just want to return an object with props where posts is an empty array. And that's just so we don't get any errors. So I'm going to jump into my else block. So if we do have results, then I want to return instead of this, I will copy it, paste it, and instead of an empty array, we want to return result dot result because that will be our posts. So now we have the server side props. I'm going to accept that as a prop in my home component here at the top. So destructure out posts. Now, of course, I just want to make sure that this is at least working. So I'm going to log posts, go to my home page, click inspect, go to console. And right now it's undefined, but what happens if I refresh? If I refresh, now we see what we have. Here is an array of posts, and we only have one post. So we see one item in this array. It has a body, main image, all the stuff that we would expect from a post. So let's start building our layout. So instead of returning hello world, I'm going to return a div with an ID, with a class name of styles.main. Now we don't have this main class yet. We need to actually create all of the classes in our CSS file. Our CSS file already exists. It's here inside of the styles folder, and it's called home.module.css. This was created automatically for us by Next.js, since this is the home page, and that would always exist. I'm going to delete all of the styles that are inside of here because that was the default stuff that was provided. And I'm going to create styles that we want for our stuff. So we want to target the main H1 and the main H3. And all we want to do is just set the text align to center. Now we want to grab the feed and set the display to flex, align items to center, and set the flex direction to column so that it's vertical instead of horizontal, because we want our list to go down instead of horizontally. So the posts, each post inside of the feed is going to have a margin of 25 pixels, a width of 500 pixels, a height of 316 pixels, cursor of pointer, a text align set to center, and we're going to do the same thing we did with our max width here, which is just going to end up being calc 100 view width minus 50 pixels. That way it never exceeds the width of the screen. And I'm adding the minus 50 pixels there just so that there's padding on both sides. Since we have the margin set to 25 pixels, that's a left and a right margin of 25 pixels separately for a total of 50. That's why I'm subtracting 50 from this as well to make sure that that space is always there. So we want to target the main image class, and inside of here, we're going to want to set the width to 500 pixels as well so that it's the same width. Set the max width to 80 view width. Set the transition to 0.2 seconds, and you'll see why we're doing that in a moment. The border radius to 5 pixels so that the corners are slightly rounded. We're going to set a max width, which is going to be exactly the same as this. And below that, we're going to add a box shadow. The box shadow is just going to give us a little bit of kind of like a three-dimensional depth. So 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 2 pixels, black. All right, and finally, we're going to say post. And whenever we hover on the post, we want our main image to shrink a little bit. So I'm going to set the width to 490 pixels, and then also copy this transition line here, which means that the animation of it going from 500 pixels to 490 pixels will take a total of 0.2 seconds so that it doesn't jerk. It has a sort of smooth transition. So that's all we need for the styles. I'll close that. Now I can go back to my template here. So inside of our main, we want to have an H1 tag that just says welcome to my blog. And then below that, an H3 that says recent posts, colon. Okay, so below this is where we're gonna have our feed. So I'm gonna create a div, give it a class name equal to styles.feed, and we wanna map through our posts. However, if you remember, our posts have that main image property, which has like a ref and something else, but it's not the actual URL to the image. We need to use that library that Sanity IO provides us in order to build the URL from that object. So we actually have to make sure that we import that from Sanity. So go ahead and import image URL builder from Sanity image URL. And what we're gonna have to do is map through our posts and create a new object for every post where we've mapped that image object to our actual image URL. So to do that, we're gonna create state. The state will be called mapped posts, set mapped posts, set that equal to use state. Make sure you have use state imported from React, and of course use effect as well, because we're gonna need that. So below this state, create an effect, and this use effect is going to rely on posts. So inside of our dependency array, put posts, and we wanna check for posts.length, because if posts has a length, we're going to wanna run our logic where we map our posts. However, if there is no length to posts, in other words, if it's just an empty array, we just want to go ahead and set mapped posts to an empty array. All right, so if you remember in our previous component, we had this little image builder object where we set the project ID in the data set. We need to do that same thing. So make sure you're using your project for this. You can pretty much just go to your post component and then copy this right here and paste it right here, because we're going to need this object. Now in our post component, we're just setting a single image because we're on a single post and there's not multiple images. There's only the one image. But inside of our post feed, there's an array of posts. So what we have to do is map through our posts, and for every single post, we have to use this URL builder. So let's say set mapped posts, and inside of here, I'm gonna map through our posts. So posts.map, and I want to, for every post, which I'm gonna call P, I wanna run a little bit of logic where I return a new object, which has all of the items of that particular object. So we're spreading here, and then we want to replace the main image property. So that's the only thing that we're concerned about replacing here is the main image property, which we need to set to image URL builder, or actually I'm going to rename this to be the same thing as this. Sorry, we'll call this image builder. So image builder. So we want to set this equal to image builder dot image, and we have to give it the image that we want to get the URL from, and the image is actually p.mainImage. Okay, but we can also now specify the width and the height. So Sanity gives us the ability to specify the width and the height for the image, and it's going to give us this nice cropped version of the image. And we can do that by saying dot width, and the width we want to give it is a 500, and we want to give it a height of 250. And that's just so that the feed, all of the images will be the same width and height, and it'll look a lot better. So now we should have a mapped array of posts that we've created and set inside of state. So with that being said, we're going to map through our mapped posts and create a div for every single one of them. But we want to make sure that we are checking for the length of the posts, because if we don't have any posts, we don't want to loop through these posts. Instead, we want to say no posts yet. So let's say mapped posts.length, and we're going to use the ternary operator here. So we're going to say if mapped posts.length, if there is a length to these posts, then we're going to go ahead and run through and map through our posts. Otherwise, we're just going to return a empty tag here, these fragments that just says no posts. So between our question mark and our colon is where we're going to actually run the logic for building our post feed. So mapped posts dot map, and we want to pull out for each post, we're going to use P, and then we want to use the index as well. So what do we want to return? Well, again, we want to return a div. Let's give this div both a class name and an onClick, but we also need to give it a key. So the key is index, which we're pulling from right here. We need to give it a key. We need to give it a class name. The class name will be styles.post, and the onClick is going to be what is going to send us to the proper URL. So if we click on post B, we're going to go to the URL for post B. If we click on post A, we're going to go to the URL for post A. So right here, we'll set an onClick, and whenever we click on it, we're going to set the router. We need to actually import the router. So import the router, import use router from next/router, And then at the top of our component here, just say const router is equal to use router, just like that. And now we have access to our router. So inside of the onClick here, we can say router.push, and we want to push to the proper URL. So I'm gonna use my backtick so that I can interpolate, and I'm gonna say /posts/ and now we need to use that slug for the post. So that's gonna be p.slug.current, but that is JavaScript. So I need to use my $ and curly braces and paste it in between those. So now when I click on that, it should take us to that particular URL. But we need to put content inside of this div. So inside of the div, we want to put a title. So I'm gonna use an h3 for that. That's just p.title. And we want to also have the image. So we'll give it a class name, set that equal to styles.mainImage, and we need to set the source. And that's very easily and very simply p.mainImage, because we've already went through and mapped all of the main images to the URLs. So now this should be set. So let's save it and see what we end up with. We see that we have an error here. The reason why we have an error is because when I initialize this state, I'm initializing it as undefined because I haven't passed in an initial value. But we need to make sure that we pass in an initial value because we're saying right here, mapped posts.length. And length exists on the object array. Now, if we don't initialize it as an array, then .length is not going to exist and it's going to break. So I'm initializing it now with an empty array, click save, refresh, and now we see our blog feed. But we should just quickly add another blog article really quick so that we can distinguish between multiple blog posts. Obviously, that would be great. So I'm going back to my Sanity admin panel, and I'm going to create a new post here. And I'll just call this another post, generate the slug automatically. I'm going to upload an image. Image is uploaded. I'm going to set published date to yesterday. And for the body, I'm just going to do another lorem ipsum generator. So I paste in my content here and click publish. And now I'll go back to my blog feed here in my app and click refresh. And cool, I see multiple blog posts. So let's see what happens when I click the first one. See, nice little hover effect. I like that. So click on the first one and we get a 404. The reason why we get a 404 is because we went to /posts with an S, plural posts / another post. So I need to go back to my code really quick. And instead of /posts, it's supposed to be /post. So right here, I'm going to delete the S and save it. The reason why it's supposed to be /post is because that's the name of the folder here that we've put our slug.js file in. So it's singular, not plural. So I go back, click back, go back to the home page. Now let's click on it. And now it takes us to the actual blog post. So now we have the proper content for that. We click on this one. Now we have the proper content for this. That looks great. So there's obviously tons more you can do with Next.js and Sanity IO, and you can go and take this blog and build off of it and customize it and really make it yours. But that's as far as I want to go in this tutorial because I really just wanted to introduce you to both of these and also allow you to kind of help you get started with building your own blog. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.